Chapter 1301. The past is gone like the wind, best friend and a companion during childhood. I, Lei Chen, am going to be the man who will become the tribe leader. Su Ming, you have to work hard and become the elder. At that time, whoever bullies us, it doesn't matter whether you become a berserker or not. Don't worry, I, Lei Chen, will protect you in the future. Hey, Su Ming, what do you think of that girl? I think I quite like her. Are we going to change? The words from his memories echoed in Su Ming's mind. At that moment, there was a sword between them, and it caused him to sigh softly as complicated emotions rose within him. He is my father. Lei Chen's expression was no longer complicated. Instead, he stared at Su Ming with clear as he spoke softly. Su Ming fell silent. Only after a long time had passed did he speak. I won't kill him. No matter how great of a killing intent he harbored, at that moment, before Lei Chen, he could not do anything. In truth, when Su Ming saw Lei Chen in harmonious Morus Alba Expanse Cosmos, he had already made some assumptions, because he sensed the presence of the one half of the seed of life extermination which he himself had nourished and which later on had been taken away by Su Xianxia on Lei Chen. When he stepped into the Emperor of Abyss True World, all the answers were revealed. Naturally, it was impossible for Yu Xian to be Su Xianyi's daughter. She was only the partner he had chosen for his son. She was a furnace he had prepared to nourish the other half of the seed of life extermination. She was just like Su Ming. Then, the only person who could possibly be Su Xianyi's real son was the third prince beside Yu Xian at the wedding Lei Chen. Lei Chen looked at Su Ming. When he heard his words, he closed his eyes, and during that instant, Su Ming took a step forward and moved past him to appear in front of Su Xianyi. He then sliced across the air with the sword in his right hand. Purple light surged through the air. The sky was instantly dyed in purple, but the light disappeared the next moment. When it did, Su Xianyi's face turned pale, and he took a few staggering steps back. Purple light spread out from his body. His facial color became even worse. He could clearly sense that as the purple light spread out, his body became weaker. At that moment, Su Ming's will swept past him and turned into a sharp force that stabbed his heart through his eyes. It was as if Su Xianyi had turned into Venus pathways. When Su Ming's will stabbed him, the purple light spread out through them. At that moment, in a remote cultivation planet in the Emperor of Abyss True World was a cave abode located in a mountain. Sitting in that cave was a person dressed in a long robe. The instant the purple light entered Su Xianyi and he looked up, he revealed an old face with purple light shining in his eyes. It was one of Su Xianyi's clones. At that moment, as purple light shone in his eyes, an invisible hand shot out of the purple light and pushed down at the top of the old man's skull. He could not dodge it. With a loud bang, the old man shuddered, then crumbled into ash, his form and soul destroyed. In Uncountable Palaces in True Sacred Yun World was a middle-aged man with an awe-inspiring face sitting upright at the top of a hall. During the second instant since the purple light entered Su Xianyi, he stared at the people below him coldly and opened his mouth as if he wanted to say something, but suddenly, he jolted, and purple light surged out from his eyes. While the cultivators below him were surprised by the sight, Su Ming's hand shot out of the purple light, and in a very casual manner, he pushed it against the center of the middle-aged man's brow. A loud bang shot up and reverberated through the air when the middle-aged man jolted and shattered into pieces. In the depths of the huge vortex in the Emperor of Abyss True World was the place where the new spirit of essence was about to be born. In it was either Su Xianyi's real form or another clone, but at the third instant since the purple light entered Su Xianyi's body, he shuddered. He did not open his eyes, as if he knew that if he opened his eyes, purple light would spread out. He stood up, but the moment he was about to leave, purple light spread out from his body to turn into a gentle strike on his body. He could not avoid the strike destined to hit him. When it landed on his forehead, the sound of something cracking inch by inch echoed in the air. The purple light disappeared then, and everything was reduced to nothingness. During the fourth instant, the aloof man who had been meditating quietly beside the corpse of Su Xianyi's wife in the fifth kill let out a soft sigh. He opened his eyes and simply allowed the purple light in his eyes to fill up the air around him. Su Ming's hand appeared from the purple light, and when he pushed at the center of the man's brow, his many years of protection ended. Located away from Black Ink Planet in Divine Essence Star Ocean was a vast ruins. It was an incredibly dangerous place, but an old man who had messy hair spilling all over his shoulders stayed there. His body was thin, and a thick wave of aura of death was spreading from it. He was sitting on a rune at that moment. The rune was incredibly old, as if it was a seal that suppressed everything within it. The old man might have seemed as if he was filled with the aura of death, but there was a hint of life force in him that refused to disappear. But that was not what was strange about the old man. What was truly strange about him was that there was a mummy stuck on his back. The mummy had been dead for an unknown number of years, but it had fixed itself tightly on the old man's back and was constantly absorbing his life force and even his aura of death like a parasite. There was pain on the old man's face. It seemed like he had maintained this sort of life for an unknown number of years, but at that moment, his eyes flew open. There was no panic in him when purple light showed up in his eyes. Instead, there was crazed delight, as if he had been waiting for this for far too long. As the purple light shone, Su Ming's right hand shot out from within and pushed down at the center of the old man's brow. The old man forced down the excitement in his heart. He did not dodge, and just let the hand formed by Su Ming's will to reduce him to ash. His form and soul were destroyed. When the purple light disappeared, the mummy, now without a host, opened its eyes and let out a sharp, piercing, crazed howl filled that had a brutal tone. The 6th instant. 7th instant. Su Xianyi's clones were all destroyed when Su Ming's will swept past them. They were all completely wiped out, and only Su Xianyi, who was forced back before Su Ming while his face turned paler, remained. Su Ming did not wipe off this body. He had promised Lei Chen that he would let Su Xianyi live. But as to how he would let him live, Su Ming chose to destroy all of Su Xianyi's clones. Even if his real body was among them, to Abyss Builders, even if their real body died, they could remain alive using their unique methods as long as one of their clones still lived. Once he finished doing all of that, Su Ming cast a glance at Su Xianyi, whose level of cultivation had plunged down until he was only in heaven cultivation because all of his clones had died. He shook his head, then turned around to walk towards Yu Xian. When he returned to her side, Su Ming gently tapped the center of her brow with his right hand. Yu Xian was still watching Su Ming. She did not move away and simply allowed his finger to land on her. Su Ming's will surged into her body. When it circulated through her once, the seed of life extermination resembling half of a ship was brought out once Su Ming severed its connection with her. When Su Ming saw numerous squirming tentacle-like threads surrounding the seed of life extermination when he brought it out, disgust appeared on his face. He'd had this thing on his body in the past. When he took it out, he threw it to Lei Chen. The half of the seed of life extermination charged swiftly to Lei Chen. At the moment it touched him, it fused into his body and merged perfectly with the other half of the seed of life extermination that Su Ming had nourished in the past and which was residing in Lei Chen's body. It became complete. Since your father did everything he could to obtain this and make it fuse with you, then from now on, since the favors and grudges between us cannot be cleared, it is better that we let our past be gone like the wind and our memories of each other disappear. Su Ming cast Lei Chen a deep glance, then with Yu Xian in hand, he moved to Elder Mo Sang. Once he bowed to him with Yu Xian, a smile appeared on the elder's face. "Elder, let's go home," Su Ming whispered softly. His elder's smile became even more kindly. He nodded, and the three of them stepped into the air. When they walked out of the ancient tree, Su Ming's low whisper traveled into the Sovereign of Dawn's ears. "Wait for me 10 years later at Arid Triad's Gap." Lei Chen stared at Su Ming's back with a dispirited expression. He suddenly called out, "Su Ming." Su Ming stopped. When he turned his head around to look, Lei Chen's voice, filled with an indecipherable tone, reached his ears. Lei Chen's body shuddered lightly. He stared at his childhood friend who was his best friend and mumbled, "I'll tell you the answer to the question you asked before. I don't want to change. But you've already changed." There was a profound look in Su Ming's eyes that made it seem as if he had seen through everything. Perhaps he had not noticed many things before he came there, but when the red figure appeared, he had already obtained his answer. When he destroyed Su Xianyi's clones, instead of saying that he ended the grudge between them, it would be best to say that this was actually a part of Su Xianyi's plans. With Su Ming's power, he destroyed the predicament Su Xianyi was in. As for whether Lei Chen told Su Xianyi about the fact that Su Ming went to harmonious Morus Alba Expanse Cosmos, Su Ming did not want to think about it. It was just as he said, he would rather treat it as it never happened and would rather that they became strangers from then on. If he was not provoked, they would not meet the other again. This is the Su Xianyi I know. When Su Ming turned his head, he averted his gaze from Lei Chen. What he saw was a calm Su Xianyi with a gaze as profound as Su Ming's own. The two of them met each other's eyes, but it only lasted for an instant. Su Ming left, and he brought with him Yu Xian as well as his elder. He walked out of the tree crown. Behind him, the 1,000,000 cultivators wrapped their fists in their palms and bowed to him. They did so to thank him for saving their lives. Wait. Once he arrived on the sea while Lei Chen remained dispirited with a complicated expression on his face and Su Xianyi stared at him with a calm look and a profound gaze, Su Ming stopped once more. He turned his head around. This time, he did not look at the tree crown, but the elegant young man standing beside the ancient tree. At that moment, he was also looking at Su Ming. At the instant their gazes met, a smile appeared on Su Ming's face. He looked at the young man, the sea, and the ancient tree, then spoke softly to Yu Xian and his elder, "I'm going to meet a senior. Wait for me for a while here." As Su Ming spoke, he walked towards the ancient tree. The young man under the tree smiled and watched him approach. They were above a vast sea, right beside an ancient tree, and the shades of green and blue seemed to connect to the sky. Chapter 1302, Arid Triad on the vast sea, beside the ancient tree, the shades of green and blue seemed to be connected to the sky. The waves glistened, seas of clouds tumbled. Where could one find the end of the world? The ancient tree was old, and the shadows of people ancient. Who was younger before the passage of time? Perhaps there was someone else who was even older than time itself. It would be the young man standing beneath the tree with a warm smile while watching Su Ming approach. When Su Ming saw the person under the tree and gradually drew closer to him, he felt as if he was moving step by step into the ancient eon of the past. With each step, he would go through countless eons and return to the past, to an unknown period of time long ago. The sky seemed to no longer move. Everything in the world had stopped, and it did so, because Su Ming and the person under the tree were destined to meet. They were like night and day. They could not meet each other, but only catch a glimpse of each other's shadow during dusk and dawn, yet even that glimpse was indistinct. Night could not see the noon, and daylight could not see midnight. But perhaps there would come a day when night would meet day, and that moment would be just like when the young man under the tree met with Su Ming. Soon, there were two people under the tree. Even though the air between the sky and sea did not move, the setting sun was still around. Its last rays shone on the sea, drawing out Su Ming and the young man's shadows on water. They were long, very long. While Su Ming watched the young man, too, watched Su Ming. At the moment their eyes met, Su Ming saw endless age and profundity in the young man's gaze. There was also a hint of fatigue in that profundity that could not be dispelled. That fatigue seemed to be the type that would only be possessed by someone who had lived for far too long. It was a natural fatigue. The young man did not want to hide it, and so he did not even try. It was there in his gaze, and his entire life was contained in that fatigue. If anyone understood it, they would understand the world, and if they did not understand it, they would not see him. Those who fell into the latter category would be just like Yu Xian at that moment. She could not see the young man under the tree. Elder Mo Sang was little different. He might appear as calm as ever, but his heart trembled greatly. He could not see the young man, but he could see two long shadows in the reflection of the tree on the surface of the sea. The two shadows swayed as the waves glistened in the light. They would occasionally shatter and sometimes appear complete. It was as if the rise and fall of entire galaxies was contained between the shattering and completion of the shadows. They contained the rise and fall of all lives, as well as their paths. It seemed like life was actually very simple, just a reflection on the surface of the sea. It was just a shadow that would sway along with the waves. If anyone took a glance at the sea, they would only see normal shadows, but if they observed them closely, they would find that the ripples of the shadows signified a person's entire life. They also resembled the moment night and day met. It looked like they could not mix, just like how fire and water could not mix, but it also seemed like they could tolerate each other in a strange fashion, showing a destruction and a wholesomeness created when they crashed into each other in an unseen manner. Do you understand now? After a long while, the young man under the tree spoke gently without the smile leaving his face. There was not a hint of fierceness and forcefulness in his voice. It was gentle, as if he was a friend, a family member, or an elder. Perhaps there were people who would answer his question that they did not understand, and there would perhaps be people who would tell him that they understood. However, the moment anyone said either of the two answers, they would place themselves in a disadvantage. In fact, if anyone compared the young man's question to a divine ability, then at that moment, the person who answered would come under its effect. If a person answered that they did not understand, their actions would be manipulated by the young man's will. If the person answered that they understood, then similarly, in a manner that they would not notice, they would become one with the young man under the tree through his will. One sentence. One divine ability. His killing intent never appeared, and it could not be noticed by anyone. Only the gentle smile could be seen, but in truth, this was the most unfathomable intent of all of arid triad expanse cosmos. What about you? After some time, a smile appeared on Su Ming's face as well, and he spoke faintly. There was no reverence in his voice, and neither was there the tenderness he would have if he was the older one in the situation. He did not show some unnecessary respect that was expected from a younger person either. He spoke in a tone he would have when he spoke with an equal. His voice was faint, but his tone very sincere. He also answered a question with a question. He did not answer whether he understood or not. However, because of this sort of answer, praise appeared in the eyes of the young man. He admired Su Ming for not running away but going along with his question. However, he did not end up being manipulated by his will. Instead, he answered his question with another question. It was a simple question. Perhaps others would not be able to detect too much of a profound meaning behind it, but to the young man under the tree, this question was perhaps something only Su Ming could do and say under this situation. It might seem ordinary, but it was most definitely anything but ordinary. It might seem like plenty of people could do this, but in truth, in this sort of situation, they would be led to giving up the initiative from their hands without their knowledge, which was what the young man under the tree had done intentionally. The young man's smile remained on his face as he stared at Su Ming. While smiling, he shook his head. His expression was gentle when he said faintly, "You don't understand." Su Ming stared at the young man under the tree. He did not speak, but instead watched the light of the setting sun in the distance gradually become weaker. It seemed like the entire sun was about to be devoured by the sea. This scene was like a picture that touched the heart of anyone who saw it, and they would definitely watch it closely. When the sun sets, everything in the world becomes dark. You don't understand the darkness at night, and you won't understand why living beings would close their eyes in the dark as well. Neither will you understand why living beings open their eyes when the sun rises. That is why you will not understand the brilliance of the disaster. It is why you are scared, but the more scared you are, the more you will want to see. Your family, your friends, and everything beside you never open their eyes in the darkness. The voice of the young man under the tree was gentle. If it was someone else around, they might not be able to quite understand what he had said, but Su Ming, who knew of the young man's identity, could. Everything has already been predestined, just like how I was destined to come here and meet you. The young man under the tree cast a deep look at Su Ming. As his voice echoed in the air, he looked at the setting sun in the distance, and he found that most of it had already disappeared within the sea. Su Ming smiled. He watched the young man before him. His smile was calm and as light as water. Perhaps we were destined to meet in this place. Then our meeting is also destined to turn into a setting sun. If I chase after the setting sun, do you think it fall or never fall in my eyes? When Su Ming said those words, the young man's eyes became focused again. If it falls, is it because I wasn't fast enough, or is it because this destined setting sun is bound to fall? If it doesn't fall, then when I chase after it for some time, would this sun still be a setting sun, or would it become a rising sun that will appear the next day? Let's put it in other words, while I chase after the sun, would the sky be black, or would it be white? Su Ming asked 4 consecutive questions in one go, and the moment he said them, he made the young man's eyes focus 4 times. Each word in their exchange was exquisite. There was no killing intent contained in their speech, but it was a battle of wills that was like a question of their dows. That is why it's not that I don't understand it, but it's because you don't understand. The moment I saw this tree, I knew that when you believe you are no longer you. When you believe you are no longer you, only then will you be you, Su Ming said slowly while staring at the young man under the tree. The young man under the tree fell silent. After a long while, he sighed softly. Your appearance is indeed beyond my expectations. I've been asleep for too long, so long that I forgot many things. Are you certain that you want to work with it? To possess me? The young man stared at Su Ming. His voice was as gentle as ever, but the smile on his face faded away. Su Ming fell silent. The path you want to take is different from mine. Su Ming said softly. There is no one same path, but as long as a path exists, then all paths will eventually fuse into one. To become Tao, the young man said faintly. The world is heartless. It sent the disaster on us. Since the destruction of the world is something that is bound to happen, if you are me, you will do the same thing. The young man under the tree swung his arm. The sky above the capital planet of the Emperor of Abyss True World immediately darkened. Everything froze. A vortex that no one besides Su Ming and the young man could see appeared there. The vortex rotated without a single sound. Bolts of lightning swam about it, intersecting and collide with each other. Every single time they collided, the sparks produced seemed to contain the laws of the world in them. As they rose and fell, it looked as if a huge flower born during an age where everything flourished had bloomed in the vortex. Su Ming looked at each of the sparks in the vortex. When his gaze gathered on one of them, he saw the birth and destruction of each eon. He saw the deaths of all lives, heard the indignant roars from the people of that time, and witnessed their resentment and anger towards the world. Each spark was an eon. What you see is the despair that is almost identical in every eon before the disaster fell on them. This is the heartless world. Only by completely destroying it would everything no longer need to go through the disaster. The young man's voice showed no signs that he was worked up. It remained as calm and gentle as ever. Even if there was a sharp note in his words, his voice was still gentle and light. It would not make anyone think bad of him. Instead, they would listen to him carefully to figure out the true meaning behind his words. I have walked this path alone, but I cannot be alone in my path for too long. Are you willing to walk down this path with me? Are you willing to walk down this path and possess the world so that the disasters will no longer fall upon us, so that all manner of lives will no longer be destroyed by the world but can gain control over their own lives? This is the oath I swore under this tree in the past. It is my will that has never changed since I possessed a part of harmonious Morus Alba and turned this expanse cosmos into Arid Triad. I am Arid Triad. I am the master of this expanse cosmos. I am the ancestor of all living things with wills. If you are willing to follow my footsteps, even if the disaster descends, I can make it so that true morning Tao world will not perish. The young man under the tree stared at Su Ming. When he spoke, he lifted his head. An indescribably mighty pressure instantly spread out from his body. It made it seem like he was the master of the entire universe. It was as if with a flip of his palm, he could turn the sky dark. With a fling of his arm, he could make the stars and space itself move back and crumble. Su Ming's pupils shrank. The young man's final words made him stare at the body Arid Triad sent down for a long, long time. Chapter 1303. This butterfly is you. I have to think about it. After some time, Su Ming spoke slowly. His expression was incredibly solemn. You do indeed need to think about this carefully. Oh well, I will give you a time limit of 100 years. If you've thought about it and have chosen your answer, you will naturally be able to sense my presence. During these 100 years, you cannot possess any other true world, or else I will seal you. And the price for sealing you will be that the disaster will be brought forward by a couple more 100 years. If you don't choose the answer I want, I will seal you as well. I will only wait for you for 100 years. The young man smiled faintly and cast a glance at Su Ming with a thought-provoking look. When he turned around, he walked into the air. His figure possessed natural grace. When he took his first step, half of his flesh vanished, and that half turned into a skeleton. When he took his second step, the other half of his body was reduced to a skeleton, but he still had a certain amount of life force in him. When he took his third step, it was as if the will gathered in that body had finally left. The skeleton was reduced to ash, which disappeared along with the wind. Su Ming watched Arid Triad leave. He focused his attention to the body of the cultivator Arid Triad had very casually chosen on this cultivation planet so that his will could descend on him. Due to it, all the potential of his life was stimulated so that he could bear the burden. At that moment, when Arid Triad left, the body withered and turned to ash. As he watched this scene, Su Ming fell silent. Once Arid Triad left, the entire planet returned to normal. Su Ming's expression was calm, but a barely noticeable sharp glint appeared in his eyes. When he lowered his head, he cast a deep glance at the ancient tree before him. After a long while, he looked at it again. This time, Su Ming watched it for a long time until he closed his eyes, and when he did, a resolute and firm look appeared beneath his shut eyelids. The entire talk with Arid Triad to the moment Arid Triad had told him to make his choice might have seemed normal, but only those who had reached Su Ming's level would be able to sense the dangers lurking within it. Every single one of Arid Triad's sentences contained a sharp and fierce intent. If Su Ming was the slightest bit careless, he would not have been offered a choice, but would have started the war between himself and Arid Triad's will ahead of schedule. Su Ming's answers, his comparison of night and day, and his words when he spoke about the direction of the sun setting if he chased after it contained his will. He did not show any signs of it being affected or changing when he spoke with Arid Triad, which was why Arid Triad did not attack him. After all, Su Ming already had the right to possess Arid Triad, which was why even Arid Triad would find it hard to destroy him. He needed a chance, and Su Ming showing a weakness so that his plan to descend during the disaster 500 years later to search for harmonious Morus Alba and possess it would not be disturbed. If Su Ming affected his plan at that time, Arid Triad would end up losing more than he gained. That was why he had asked Su Ming to make a choice, but this choice was in truth not a choice. It was a very blatant threat, but if Su Ming treated it as a real threat, then Su Ming was bound to be sealed. Even if he chose to work together with Arid Triad would definitely fulfill his promise. He would just seal Su Ming. Because this choice was a seed. It was a seed Arid Triad planted in Su Ming's heart, just like how Su Ming had planted his seed in Arid Triad with his words about day and night. Nothing exciting seemed to have happened during the encounter, but only Su Ming and Arid Triad knew that both of them had actually started showing signs of wanting to attack just then. Su Ming opened his eyes. He turned around and walked towards Yu Xian and Elder Mo Sang, who was watching him with a face filled with worry. Who was he? Su Ming's elder hesitated for a moment before a hint of understanding appeared on his face. The answer to his question had in truth appeared in the elder's heart between the moment he hesitated to ask the question and when that look of understanding appeared on his face. Arid Triad. Su Ming smiled faintly. He did not say much. When he stared at his very clearly older elder, he knew that there were far too many secrets within the elder's mind, and they were related to the elder's past self as well as great Berserker tribe. Let's go home, Su Ming said softly. With Yu Xian in tow and while Su Ming stayed beside his elder, the three of them turned into long arcs and left the cultivation planet. They entered the galaxy and disappeared from the Emperor of Abyss True World. Disappearing with them was an excited bald crane and an elated Abyss Dragon. One of them took away all the crystals from the true world, and the other had fulfilled its ambitions from when it was younger. The Abyss Dragon mentioned not a word of it, but based on how it often seemed to be recounting its experiences, it looked like there was a hint of lust contained in its ambitions, no matter how anyone looked at it. Time passed, and in the blink of an eye, 3 years passed. Su Ming had returned to Ninth Summit. During the 3 years, he did not venture out again. He kept his senior brother's company while Yu Xian, Kang Lan, and Shu Hui stayed beside him. The elder had finally returned to the Berserkers. He built a house at the foot of Dark Mountain, and just like a real old man in the mortal world, he watched the sun rise and set. He lived a very peaceful life. He had plenty of stories. Perhaps they were stories that spanned through the 4 eras of their eon, but Su Ming did not ask him about them. Instead, he often came to sit beside his elder and watch the sky with him. Every single time he did so, Su Ming would remember the Dark Mountain. He remembered Xiao Hong, and all the people who were now strangers to him. He might not have asked his elder about his secrets, but with Su Ming's level of cultivation, he could already tell some of what was going on. He could see the signs of repeated cycles of life on his elder. With those cycles, the elder of great Berserker tribe had preserved his soul. During them, he might have been searching for the scene he saw when he predicted the Berserker day but which no one else could see. It was a butterfly that gave great Berserker tribe their future. The elder lifted his head and looked at Su Ming, who had already left into the distance after he had spent the entire day with him. Under the moonlight, he mumbled softly under his breath, "That butterfly isn't harmonious Morus Alba. That butterfly is you, my La Su." As he murmured those words, a sparkle of expectation appeared in his eyes. He would never forget the scene he saw when he predicted the Berserker day. He had gone through countless cycles of life and death all so that he could wait for Su Ming and protect this child. He had him get in touch with the Berserkers and had him acknowledge them. During the 3 years, with his outstanding abilities, second senior brother finally extended Ninth Summit's influence to all areas in True Morning Dao World after Su Ming had stunned and intimidated Dark Dawn and Saint Defier, causing Ninth Summit to live up to their name of being the only sect in True Morning Dao World. Eldest senior brother also had increased his power every single day. As for Hu Zi, his personality prevented him from staying in one place quietly for too long, so he often ventured out to sweep through the entire True World and pass through the other True Worlds as if displaying Ninth Summit's strength. Due to Su Ming's existence and the Sovereign of Dawn Yang Pei's fear towards him, the cultivators from Dark Dawn and Saint Defier were forced to retreat when Ninth Summit passed by. This also caused the battles where the other True Worlds were clearly in a disadvantage to be unable to continue the moment Hu Zi appeared. And most of the time, when Hu Zi saw fighting, he would immediately shout, "Ninth Summit has beautiful mountains and clear waters. When Dark Dawn and Saint Defier see Ninth Summit, they have to make a detour. My youngest junior brother is the strongest person in all of Arid Triad, and he is in Ninth Summit. Those who want to join the Ninth Summit, immediately shout. I'd like to see which of these brats from Dark Dawn and Saint Defier would dare to attack you." It was the truth of the situation as well. As long as Hu Zi was in the battlefield and as long as there were people who shouted that they wanted to join Ninth Summit, even if that person was about to be killed by the cultivators from Dark Dawn and Saint Defier, they would immediately be released. No one had the courage to attack people that belonged to Ninth Summit, and they would not even care about the backlash of their divine abilities because they had stopped attacking. They could only nurse their grievances, because the Sovereign of Dawn Yang Pei had already told all the cultivators that Ninth Summit was not to be provoked. But the Sovereign of Dawn was not the only one who reacted this way. It was an order that would bring death to all who went against it, for it was an order that unanimously came from all 3 Sovereigns of Dawn from Dark Dawn and the 3 Lords from Saint Defier. In fact, every single time there were new cultivators who descended from Dark Dawn and Saint Defier in True Morning Dao World, they would first go near Ninth Summit and bow to it before leaving. Su Ming's name had spread through all of Arid Triad during the 3 years, and because of it, Ninth Summit's influence became stronger. The number of cultivators who joined it increased by multiple fold. Those were cultivators who had once belonged to other True Worlds. For whatever reason, they chose to become Ninth Summit's disciple. Branch sects had appeared in Ninth Summit, and eldest senior brother and Hu Zi were stationed in the 2 sects to intimidate the world around them. Time passed, and another 3 years went by. During them, some huge incidents happened, such as Su Xianyi and Lei Chen disappearing from the Emperor of Abyss True World, the Emperor of Abyss True World surrendering to Dark Dawn, and the sublime paragon of that True World who had avoided being killed by Su Ming in the past choosing to become Ninth Summit's disciple. After persevering for 5 years, True Sacred Yin World was occupied by Dark Dawn and Saint Defier during the 6th year when their True World protection rune crumbled. The living beings in there suffered miserably, and the number of deaths was devastating. Su Ming did not care about any of that. He was not a saint. His heart would only be gentle towards the people he cared about. As for the others, to him, who had already become the strongest will in this expanse cosmos second only to Arid Triad, they were all just a part of the rise and fall of life. It did not matter whether it was Dark Dawn or Saint Defier, for Su Ming had understood a long time ago that the true reason behind why they caused the war. It was an offering. When the 3rd period of 3 years arrived and ended, a change of tides appeared in the war that Su Ming paid no attention to. He had predicted the change in tide, because an offering would require sacrifice from both sides, not just one side, or else it would be a massacre and not an offering. The change in tide came from the fourth true world. The antecedental spirits who were suppressed in there during the fourth era seemed to have had all the seals suppressing them released in an instant. When they ventured outwards, they waged an intense war against Dark Dawn and Xianxia. Their war even affected Ninth Summit. The madness and arrogance of the antecedental spirits who were released caused the four true worlds in Arid Triad to look as if they had descended into an age of chaos. Only at that moment did Su Ming lift his right hand and put down the chess piece he was about to use to play against his elder. He lifted his head and looked in the direction of the fourth true world. We should give those antecedental spirits a lesson. This expanse cosmos can descend into chaos, but there must be an order in chaos, not chaos as of such. When Su Ming spoke faintly, his elder smiled kindly. He did not speak, but lowered his head to look at the chessboard. Chapter 1304. Let this sea and this tree merge into one. The elder watched the chessboard. With a smile on her face, Yu Xian remained seated next to Su Ming. Her expression was one of incredible attentiveness. She was also staring at the chessboard. When Su Ming spoke, a sly look appeared in her eyes. She lifted her hand and tugged a lock of hair dancing in the wind behind her ear. During that moment, Kang Lan suddenly coughed softly by the side. Elder. The elder lifted his head, and the moment his gaze landed on Kang Lan, Yu Xian put down her hand. She then moved a white piece belonging to the elder on the chessboard. Elder, there are quite a number of berserkers who would like to greet you. Would you let them meet you in the next few days? Kang Lan's expression remained the same. Not a single hint of change of emotion could be detected on her. She asked the elder with a gentle demeanor and looked incredibly respectful. You can make the arrangements as you like. The elder smiled amicably. As he spoke, he instinctively wanted to lower his head to look at the chessboard, but at that moment, a smile bloomed on Shu Hui's face while she was beside Su Ming. She swept her gaze past Kang Lan and Yu Xian before she spoke. Elder, you will need some time before you can continue with the game. Why don't you tell us things about Su Ming when he was a child? That's right, Elder. Tell us about his childhood. Don't you agree, big sister Kang Lan? Yu Xian said quickly. The three of them did not differentiate themselves by age, but both Yu Xian and Shu Hui referred to the gentle and elegant Kang Lan as their big sister. Shu Hui was the second. Regardless of whether it was her personality or the words she usually used, Yu Xian gave off the feeling that she was young, which was why she was the youngest among the three women. The elder laughed. He no longer looked at the chessboard but instead lifted his head to look at the three women beside Su Ming. His smile became even more kindly. The three women each had their own talents, and all of them were genii. He looked at them, then looked at Su Ming, who had closed his eyes at that moment, and he joyfully told them some of the more interesting things Su Ming had done when he was younger. But he did not know that the game had been changed, causing Su Ming's original disadvantage to change into an advantage. Su Ming did not pay any attention to any of it. At the instant he closed his eyes, he spread his divine sense, turned it into his will, and then sent it to descend in the fourth true world. The galaxy there was filled with chaos. Wills belonging to antecedental spirits filled the entire true world, and they brought with them the desire to wreak havoc and madness. They had arrogance that made it feel as if they wanted to tear apart the world. When they rose in the galaxy, they filled up the fourth true world and brought forth a bloody massacre. The killing even extended to Sacred Yin, and the Emperor of Abyss True World. In fact, there were even some antecedental spirits who had come from the fourth true world to True Morning Tao World. As they laughed madly while roaring, they engaged in a fight to the death against people from Dark Dawn and Xianxia. Once anyone died, the antecedental spirits would immediately suck in a breath to absorb the dead cultivators into their bodies, devouring them. In truth, the antecedental spirits who had their seals broken and were released by the fourth true world did not even care whether their enemies were from Dark Dawn and Xianxia. The cultivators from the other true worlds also became their targets, as if they were their food. With every cultivator they devoured, they would become stronger. Because of it, the antecedental spirits who rushed out of the fourth true world stirred up another disaster in Arid Triad Expanse Cosmos. The cultivators from Arid Triad, Dark Dawn, and Xianxia continued dying one after another. The antecedental spirits' release and slaughter during that year caused arid triad expanse cosmos to be slightly different. Su Ming could also sense that as the people died, the power of his own will rose by quite a large margin. Arid triad expanse cosmos was filled with a brutality and an invisible power that could make people descend into madness. It was as if a bloody flower that would only appear in the apocalypse was blooming and spreading out. Su Ming could sense that the feeling of arid triad expanse cosmos moving during the past 10 years was faster than before the war began, and it was faster by 70 years. Everything seemed to happen faster by 7 times. Only by doing so could arid triad make the disaster that would originally require 3,000-something years to appear when the 4 wings overlap to be reduced to only 500 years. As he watched arid triad expanse cosmos change, Su Ming filed all of this information away as if he had come to understand everything. His heart was calm, and not a single ripple appeared due to the things happening around him. He knew that 100 years later, he would have to face a disaster, and that disaster would come from arid triad. If Su Ming could not get through the disaster, there would be no future to speak of, but if he could survive, then 500 years later, arid triad's disaster would arrive, and during the instant the wings overlapped, Su Ming would possess arid triad. He would not choose to cooperate with arid triad. Forget the choice arid triad had provided to him. That was not a choice, but a seed planted at the bottom of his heart. 100 years later, when the seed grew, it would bring him a life-threatening disaster that would end up with him being sealed. Even if arid triad truly wanted to work with Su Ming would still not make that choice, because it was as the young man had said, their paths were different. When anyone reached Su Ming and arid triad's level of cultivation, there was no longer a distinction between good and bad between them, and neither were there any sort of grudge. A battle of wills would happen due to their paths being different and because there was little common ground for understanding between them. In truth, Su Ming was originally not certain of this either, but he had cast 3 deep glances at the ancient tree on the capital planet of the Emperor of Abyss True World before he left, and those 3 glances had allowed him to understand the meaning of preordained fate. Su Ming would not hide from the promise he made with arid triad under the ancient tree 100 years later. He would go. On the vast sea below the ancient tree, the shades of blue and green seemed to connect with the sky. The blue was the ocean, and green was the tree that seemed to melt the line separating the ocean and the sky so that it could make the sky truly connect with the sea and make the sea turn into one with the tree. Perhaps they had always been one. Su Ming sighed in his heart. He focused his mind and stopped thinking about those things. Instead, as his will spread out, he had it filled all of arid triad. Even if true sacred yin worlds will did not belong to Su Ming, even if the 4th true worlds will try to reject him, Su Ming had possessed 4 great true worlds, so he could instantly suppress the 2 great wills, causing them to not dare reveal their presences. Instead, they allowed Su Ming to sweep through their true worlds with his will. In a galaxy to the east of the 4th true world was a huge swamp. A bloody stench spread out from within it. Submerged in the putrid water were countless corpses of cultivators from Dark Dawn, Xianxia, as well as arid triad. There were a few dozen corpses belonging to disciples from 9th Summit's branch sects as well. Those people had already lost their lives, and as their bodies were submerged in the swamp, they slowly rotted away and absorbed. Surrounding the swamp were nearly 30,000 cultivators from Dark Dawn and Xianxia. They people had cautious looks, and under the lead of 3 antecedental spirits from their expanse cosmoses, they were engaged in a battle of divine abilities against the swamp. When booming sounds echoed in the air, a face showed up from within the swamp. There was a ferocious look on it when it looked at the cultivators before it. "All of you must die." A muffled roar reverberated through space. The swamp swiftly grew larger, but at that moment, a will so great that it caused all 30,000 cultivators' minds to instantly go blank and made the 3 antecedental spirits belonging to Dark Dawn and Xianxia to instantly feel as if their souls had frozen up appeared. When they lost their consciousness, the huge swamp shuddered, and the face on it swiftly looked up to glare at space. The being's pupils shrank, and shock appeared on his face. "Who are you? Who are you?" When his shouts echoed in space, a cold harumph could be heard. Immediately after, a hand appeared in space. It was not big, and it pushed down lightly, but the swamp immediately roared. It started drying up, and a large number of cracks instantly appeared. Banging sounds reverberated through space, and nearly 4/10 of the swamp crumbled. I, Su Ming, do not care about you killing the cultivators from Dark Dawn, Saint Defier, or Arid Triad, but provoking Ninth Summit is not allowed. Do not repeat your mistake. Su Ming's voice traveled into the ears of the antecedental spirit in the swamp, intimidating him greatly and causing the swamp to not dare to show even a hint of struggle or resistance as it trembled. During that moment, Ninth Summit was branded deeply into the divine sense of the antecedental spirit in the swamp, and it became a taboo. Su Ming's terrifying might had shocked the antecedental spirit. No matter how mad he was, in the face of the absolute power that could destroy him with a flip of his hand, he could only lower his head and show respect to the west of the fourth true world. A crazed laughter shook the sky. A person with a body like a normal person but with 2 legs that were 100 feet long walked through the galaxy. His body parts seemed incompatible with each other, and he looked incredibly bizarre, but there was a presence that would bring terror to others spreading out from his body. The person's hair was a mess, and his upper body was uncovered. When he took a step forward, he smiled in a way that held a hint of lust. He was chasing after 8 cultivators. Among the 8 of them, 3 came from Dark Dawn and Saint Defier, 4 from the Emperor of Abyss True World, and 1 was a female cultivator who had entered Ninth Summit's branch sect from True Sacred Yin World 3 years ago. The long-legged strange man laughed and lifted his right hand, which immediately shot forward. As if a vacuum had been formed, the 3 cultivators from Dark Dawn and Saint Defier were instantly pulled to him. When they fell into his palm, he crushed them, and the 3 turned into minced meat with a bang. The huge hand appeared again, and the minced meat turned into the most aggressive enchanted vessel that charged towards the remaining 5 cultivators. As the 4 from the Emperor of Abyss True World screamed in pain, the minced meat shot through their bodies, and they became a part of that minced meat. As for the female cultivator from Ninth Summit, her face was pale when she was seized by the strange man's right hand, which was now several times larger than before. She was brought before him, and the lust in the strange man's eyes grew even greater. Not bad, you can be a furnace. The strange man laughed loudly and tossed the woman into his sleeve. In that seemingly small sleeve were thousands of female cultivators he had captured. He turned around and was just about to leave when he suddenly jolted. His expression instantly became grave. He narrowed his eyes and fixed his stare on a white-robed figure who had appeared behind him at some unknown point of time. An antecedental spirit such as you should not be sealed. You should be wiped off straight away. Su Ming frowned. When he said those words, he took a step forward. The strange man roared. He could sense a powerful threat to his life coming from Su Ming. But when he was about to retreat, Su Ming took a step forward and moved past him. As Su Ming left into the distance, the giant experienced a full body shudder. His head swiftly separated from his body, which withered right after. His sleeve was torn into shreds, and when the thousands of female cultivators in it fled, the strange man's body crumbled with a bang to turn into waves of aura that fused into the women, becoming the greatest serendipity that could make their cultivation bases increase by leaps and bounds. Chapter 1305. The 7th Reversed Spirit. It was Su Ming's punishment for the strange man. A similar scene appeared in hundreds of places at the same time in the 4th True World. Based on how they acted, some of the antecedental spirits were wiped off by Su Ming, some were warned, but none were exempted. The antecedental spirits released from the 4th True World were connected to each other through their minds. When some of them were wiped off by Su Ming, all the antecedental spirits could sense their deaths clearly when they died. They would not have been too shocked if not many of them died, but in a few breaths, a total of 32 antecedental spirits had been wiped off. The shock of this incident intimidated the other antecedental spirits. The moment they noticed it, the surviving antecedental spirits immediately sensed Su Ming's terrifying will around them. They all received punishments of varying heaviness without exception, and all of them felt chills run down their spines. Ninth Summit's name was carved deeply into their minds. As Su Ming's will descended in True Sacred Yin World, the dozen-something antecedental spirits who had their seals released felt their hearts tremble. No matter what they had been doing, all of them felt a layer of ice envelop them. Almost at the same time, Su Ming's words reached their ears. Such maliciousness and brutality should be wiped off. As they echoed in the mind of every single antecedental spirit in True Sacred Yin World, they immediately sensed the presence of one of their companions disappearing. It symbolized death. Since this is your first offense, I will let you off, but do not repeat your mistake. You will be warned once for killing for fun. For your extreme brutality, you will be wiped off. Su Ming's voice echoed in the air for a few breaths, and a total of 3 antecedental spirits were wiped off. The intimidating force formed by the shock instantly caused fear to appear on the faces of the antecedental spirits who were in true sacred yin world. If any of you dare provoke 9th Summit in the slightest bit, you will be wiped off. When Su Ming's final words echoed in the antecedental spirits' ears, all the antecedental spirits in true sacred yin world sank into silence as they sensed Su Ming's terrifying might and domineering will. It was the same in the Emperor of Abyss True World. As Su Ming's will descended and left, 4 of the antecedental spirits who had surged into this true world disappeared for all time. The last was True Morning Dao World. There were 13 antecedental spirits who had stepped into this true world to cause chaos. The method Su Ming used to handle them was completely different compared to what he used in the other true worlds. He did not say anything to them, but instead had his will sweep through the true world, and when booming sounds reverberated through space, the 13 antecedental spirits who were already terrified by their companions' continuous deaths were all destroyed. Neither their souls nor bodies survived. Dragons had taboos, and Su Ming's taboo could be said to be True Morning Dao World. He would not allow any accidents to happen in this place, which was why all who dared invade would die without question. All of this might have seemed to have happened over a long period of time, but in truth, it only lasted for a time it takes half an incense stick to burn. When Su Ming opened his eyes while sitting beside the chessboard, his expression was one of indifference. He watched his elder talk about the interesting things that had happened to him while he was younger, and Yu Xian, Kang Lan, and Shu Hui listened to him with great interest. A smile appeared on Su Ming's face. When he lowered his head to look at the chessboard, he picked up a black piece, but he was suddenly taken aback. One white piece was not in the position he remembered it to be. When a rather strange look appeared on his face, the bald crane lifted its head from the ground and cast a glance at Su Ming in a lackadaisical manner before it looked at Yu Xian. A thought appeared in its head, but just as it was about to show off its knowledge in a manner of currying his favor, Yu Xian suddenly turned her head sideways with a grin and cast the bald crane a glance. This glance caused the bald crane to shudder. It could clearly sense a warning on Yu Xian's gaze, and it quickly steeled its expression before swiftly running to the Abyss Dragon. As for the Abyss Dragon, it was staring at the lake water while daydreaming. Occasionally, it would growl at the surface of the water. When the bald crane came over, it struck the dragon's head fiercely. "What are you looking at? Darn it all." The Abyss Dragon tapped its head and spoke as if it had suffered greatly. "You hit me again. I seem to have seen another me in the lake." It constantly thought that it had become much dumber than before, but if anyone else had their head continuously struck for the 1,000 years, the repeated concussions would cause them to do actions that other people would not understand. Why you? You stupid dragon, the one in the surface of the lake is Yu Ha." The bald crane shook its head and cast a pitying look at the Abyss Dragon. It began mumbling in its mind that if it ever found anyone unpleasant in its eyes, it would strike their heads repeatedly for a whole year. When it thought of this, the bald crane's eyes immediately brightened, and it grew slightly smug, as if it had thought of a divine ability that possessed unparalleled might. At that moment, while it was feeling all smug, it did not notice that the reflection of the Abyss Dragon in the lake had a similarly smug look on its honest-looking face. Heh, does this stupid crane really think I don't know? I, the great Abyss Dragon, is much smarter than it. It thinks I'm stupid? Well, I'm just toying with it. Time passed in this warmth that was something Su Ming had not encountered for a long time. A year later, Su Ming had already stayed in 9th Summit for a total of 10 years. Su Ming did not continue living peacefully in 9th Summit after that. Instead, he chose to leave. He had to go and complete the third matter. He had decided Uponto go to Dark Dawn to take a look at his mother's race, and also search for his master, Xianxia's tracks. Perhaps he could also find the god of berserkers, Lai Xianxia. On that day, Su Ming's elder stood outside his house and watched the sky. He seemed to be able to see Su Ming turning his head back to cast a glance at 9th Summit while he was in the galaxy. "Your path is still very long, but I am already very satisfied to be able to see you having grown this much," the elder murmured. The smile on his face became even more kindly and amiable, but there was a faint hint of aura of death within it. It was already time for him to return to the embrace of Earth. He had lived through countless cycles of life and death, and finally, in this cycle, he completed his wish. Su Ming turned his head around to look at Ninth Summit while he was in the galaxy. He saw his senior brothers, Yu Xian, Shu Hui, and Kang Lan, and also saw the aura of death about his elder's body. The presence was not thick, but as time passed, it would become thicker. Being born, growing old, getting sick, and dying was a process in life that could not be changed. But perhaps the disaster that would occur 500 years later would allow it all to become different. In silence, Su Ming turned around and walked into space. The bald crane followed behind him, occasionally turning its head to look at the abyss dragon. There was a slight reluctance to part on its face, but that reluctance was born due to it not being able to strike the abyss dragon's head every single day. While it was lamenting this fact, it made up its mind that when it went to Dark Dawn, it would find a substitute. It could not let itself get rusty with this powerful divine ability. The galaxy was boundless, and there was no end to it. Brilliant starlight would occasionally look like embellishments on a picture. No one knew who it was who had drunk wine and accidentally spilled ink on a canvas to draw the galaxy. Su Ming walked through the galaxy and arrived at Arid Triad's Gap in true Morning Dao world. It was the place where Dark Dawn and Saint Defier descended, and it was also the entrance leading to those lands. The bald crane continued chattering all the way, talking about how it would obtain crystals when it arrived in Dark Dawn. As it spoke, Su Ming stopped moving and turned his head around to look at it. Darn it all. When I'm there, I'll definitely loot all their crystals. I will definitely. Ha! When the bald crane saw Su Ming turn his head back, it was taken aback. It looked behind it, then turned around to look back at Su Ming. What's wrong? Su Ming stared at the bald crane, and a smile appeared on his face. Don't be afraid. I'll take you there, and no one can stop you from regaining your identity, Su Ming said softly. When he said those words, the bald crane shuddered, then lowered its head and fell silent. Its constant rapid speech had allowed Su Ming to see that it was afraid. It was afraid of going to Dark Dawn and Saint Defier. That was not because there was anything terrifying about that place, but because it might be its hometown. After a long while, when the bald crane lifted its head, the uncaring and unbothered look appeared on its face again. It continued chattering about how it would loot crystals while walking next to Su Ming. After a long time passed, when the bald crane stared at the galaxy in the future, it would try to recall, but it could never be able to find its memories. However, it would still be able to occasionally remember a white-robed figure in the galaxy telling it to not be afraid. Every single time, it would feel sad, but the source of the sadness it could not find was the melancholy it could never trace back. It could only stand at the peak of a mountain and look at the galaxy. Even if it had its own sect and it was no longer as obsessed with crystals, and even if it was worshipped by countless cultivators, it still tried to search for the past it lost and could never get back. It could only vaguely remember that there was once a person who brought it to walk through a part of its life. As the bald crane continued mumbling, Su Ming took it into the distance. He walked to Arid Triad's Gap. The sovereign of Dawn Yangpei had long since arrived to fulfill his task of meeting Su Ming, which he had received 10 years ago. In fact, he had arrived in this place a few months ahead of schedule and had been waiting for Su Ming ever since. When Su Ming walked towards Arid Triad's Gap, there was a vast space located beyond Arid Triad, or rather, there was a vast space beyond the sleeping harmonious Morus Alba's 4 wings. There were no galaxies, only a clouded space that looked like muddled fog that only existed before everything was created. At that moment, a sudden ray of white light suddenly illuminated everything in every direction, causing the fog to tumble about and avoid it to reveal a huge, ring-shaped feng shui compass. It was covered in talismans and carvings that could not be counted. They were the ones who emitted the white light and illuminated the empty space. At that moment, there was a black-robed young man sitting on the feng shui compass. He had long black hair and was filled with ghastly aloofness. In his hands, he held a string of pearls. There was a total of 9 of them, and 6 were shining, while the remaining 3 were dark. However, at that moment, one of the 3 dark pearls suddenly shone with a faint light. The vague shadow of a crane seemed to be visible in that light. When the black-robed young man turned the string of pearls in his hand, He slowly lifted his head and looked into a distant space. Over there was the spot where the 9 butterflies once were, and where harmonious Morus Alba had stopped to rest. I finally found the 7th reversed spirit.